Now in this segment, we're going to go through more about jobs and real estate. But first, we just want to kind of wrap up spending and what does it mean for the consumer as we start to look at jobs and what is the underlying issues going forward. So this is just looking at U.S. credit and debit card spending change from 1 year earlier. And the interesting side is that the turn down has been across the board. Obviously, some of them a bit sharper than others. Department, apparel, and accessories has been on that downward trend since essentially the first time that we got stimulus back in April. But now we're starting to see a big turn down. Warehouse clubs, discount dollar stores, alcohol, beverage, and snacks. The bigger one to look at is discount and dollar stores because that's usually where everybody falls down to as people look to save money. If you were buying at Target, maybe you go to the dollar store more often. If you were buying at Walmart, well, are you at the dollar store? And that's why the dollar store and discount stores in general are a bigger tell as to what is the all levels of spending really looking like. And here we're seeing it really kind of turn down hard in December as people are kind of staring down the gun of a barrel with the ending of unemployment benefits as of December 26th. Will it get extended? That's what is being negotiated right now in the government. And that's why we've seen this move down. And this is also a big driver of why retail sales had that big miss to the downside. But when we look at high income consumers, and obviously high income has recovered and remained fairly stable. But when we look at 50 to 100,000 of annual income and under 50, you can see that the under 50 is a steady stream to the downside. But the 50 to 100 is the one that we're seeing a bigger step down. And we're seeing this bifurcation again in the market where people are feeling a little bit better about their chances if you're making 100 and over, buying into the end of the year, trying to give people a great holiday season. But those at the lower end are starting to get more concerned or starting to pull back, which again is culminating in a reduction in total retail sales, which is just going to be an overarching problem, especially as we go through the remainder of the year. But as we head into next year, where do jobs sit? Do we automatically get CapEx rejuvenated and companies are going to start hiring? They just want to get through 2020. Do we get this big surge? And that's where we remain unsure. But again, just given where the trend was in 2019 into 2020, we just don't see this big rejuvenation in the beginning of 2021 on a job side. So we think that this slowdown will continue and perpetuate through at least the first 2 months of Q1. But when we look at Q3, household net worth rose by 3.2%, but disposable personal income fell 3.4% to the worst rate in 7 years. Now, this is the overarching theme of household net worth. So the household itself has gotten wealthier, and that's come from rising stocks, rising bonds, rising real estate prices in terms of their net worth on hard assets. But those aren't exactly liquid. I mean, you could sell stocks, but clearly nobody sells stocks anymore. You could sell bonds, but nobody sells bonds either. So you're just watching these things go up, but disposable personal income, the stuff that people can actually use quickly, has gone down because everybody is piled in. We talked about calls and using leverage and all this fun stuff in the market, sending stocks to ever-ending higher. But what does this mean for when people all of a sudden need to pay rent or do more? And that's when we start to see some of this pressure to the downside. And right now, personal income falling remains an overarching problem. But when we look at job postings from Indeed, you can see that we're seeing our normal kind of seasonal slowdown, but we continue to tighten. Now we're only 11% off of 2019. But I just want to preface that because we started to get more and more concerned in 2019, starting at, let's just say July. But then as we got into November, especially September, October, when the Fed had to get more active in into the Fed funds market, all of a sudden, 2019 started to get much worse. We started to see a slowdown in activity. We started to see the market come off. So even though we're only 11% away from 2019, that is not a great indicator of kind of a strong market. So the fact that we're starting to turn down with it should kind of give us pause, especially as we go into, what are jobs going to look like as we go through Q1. And now, just to look at personal income, just to kind of give the backdrop before we start looking at the small business index and what does that mean for jobs, you can see U.S. personal income continues to drift down, but it's still higher than it was pre-COVID because we're including stimulus, supplemental unemployment benefits. These are the kind of things that continue to support the economy. And without a renewed stimulus bill coming from Congress, that's going to come under additional pressure as the Fed and the monetary policy continues to be highly accommodative. It's just, how is it getting to the everyday man who is still struggling with lack of a job, still struggling with how are they going to survive to the next, essentially the next go round as, stimulus and just spending come under additional pressure. And that's why when we look at the small business index, and this is looking at things a little bit differently, as we've talked about. Some places have gotten better than others, but we're still below on a negative level, and we're seeing some of that turnaround, which again just leads to the pressure of just a just general tax revenue that can be used for states to close the gap as they look to pay their unemployment benefits as state aid comes back into question. When we look at the negotiation that's been happening within the Congress right now, and now week ending total spending. This is just looking at just the General CARES Act, and week ending as of November 29th, total spending is down 11.6%. Again, you can see the precipitous drop, how that continues. And this is typically when we start to see Black Friday, people doing more. Again, these are things that are going to be a bigger problem because we came into December on a weak footing. And so far that continues to kind of push through the system as we continue to see not only just low income, but also high income spending is moving lower. And again, these are pressures that just don't go away overnight, are not something that changes quickly to the upside as we have these pressures continuing to mount. With looking at it, earnings loss among the bottom third. Again, these are earnings capacity. How the earnings capacity and the effects from flows into and out of employment. Again, we're seeing this general negative move because effective from wage changes among workers maintaining employment. Those positive benefits expired in September, and now October, November, we're getting this negative drag, which is just going to continue to pull down spending, and it's going to pull down just general economic activity, which is why it's so important, or why there's so much really kind of residing on, can the Congress pass an additional spending bill, as total initial claims went up 37% week over week, as you can see where we sit. And the issue is we continue to see more people going from temporary to permanent unemployment. And this is just showing the shift going from, just in the amount of people on continuing claims for unemployment. Again, all putting pressure on just the reason why we need additional stimulus to try to bridge some of this gap into the new year and try to give us some sort of a footing that we can kind of jump off of to try to get some and stimulate the economy. But decline in housing inventories is starting to moderate. So now we've done with jobs and we've done with unemployment, but now it's time to look, okay, well, what's happening on housing side? People have seen their home prices increase exponentially, but again, we've also seen low and medium incomes, their spending has adjusted. Is it because they're concerned about mortgage payments, rent payments? So we're seeing the housing inventory starting to moderate, and it's just because, and as we keep talking about, people who had the means to move moved. We had the mortgage rate, the average mortgage, the person getting a mortgage had a 760 on the credit score or better, which means that you had the top quartile of people who could move, did move. Are we going to get a second wave? Or was the first wave just that, a first wave and then we're done? And here we're starting to see some of that inventory get rejuvenated. Some of those people may be testing the waters. Again, it's November into December, so typically we get a slowdown in general activity. But as we look at the unemployment benefits and other benefits that were expected, typically, but January 2nd, we were supposed to get the expiration of the moratorium on rent and mortgage forbearance foreclosures. So what does that mean? Well, an estimated 30 to 40 million renters could be at risk of eviction as we head into 2021. And again, you're not on a positive footing on an underlying economic level if 30 million people could be at risk of being evicted. If you think about just how what that does to spending, what that does to just the general value of someone's home as you have new homes coming available, you have rents falling. Again, these are some of those deflationary things that obviously the Fed is trying to offset, but these are the pressures that are real. And how many times can you kick the can? Like, at what point have they exhausted and we need to let the economic cycles come back into work and kind of clean out and clear up, because rents do need to come down. Well, what speeds that than evictions or foreclosures or renegotiations? Because do you want to worry about getting a new tenant, or are you willing to cut rent 30%? These are things that have to happen, conversations that need to come about in order to get to some sort of stability as we head into next year. Now, the different worlds, and this is where we start talking about conventional mortgage-backed securities and Ginnie Mae mortgage-backed securities, and we see that the likelihood of forbearance continues to increase or stay elevated, even as they start to come down. But where does this sit? Like, what does this mean going forward? And what have people done with some of this capital? And what does it mean with new capacity coming on and taking away some of these home prices that people have enjoyed? And when we look at home prices, well, let's look at total value of U.S. real estate held by households. So there's mortgage debt outstanding, which is flat, fairly flat, but homeowner equity has only increased since, let's call it 2012 to today. Now, have people just sat on their homeowner equity and say, wow, this is great, I feel wealthier because my home is now worth more? Or have they gone out and taken out a home equity line? And the answer is both. Some people have gone out and taken out a home equity line because there's more equity in the home, which is why any type of big correction in pricing, as we saw from 2005 to 2008, any correction in pricing put people underwater, because could they cover their mortgage debt outstanding? Sure. But they couldn't cover the home equity line they took out to buy the boat, to buy the second home, to buy the jet ski, or take the lavish vacation. And all of a sudden you were underwater. Even though your mortgage was manageable, the home equity that you had built up disappeared because the prices have come down. Because you could say that your home is worth more, but if you're not actively going out and essentially capturing that price, then that's all it is just a number. Like, you still need to actually sell your home to realize that price, or, as people have, borrow against it. And who has borrowed against it? Well, U.S. home equity withdrawals, you can see the amount of home equity withdrawals that have increased. And you could see that the last time we had that big pop and then the failure were in the same thing. So even though home equity has increased, people have been very active in tapping that and saying, well, I'm going to take that and I'm going to make it mine and I'm going to spend it elsewhere. Again, increasing the leverage at the home, increasing the leverage for the household. So even though it looks like they have collateral, it looks like they have some backing, they're going out and borrowing against it, which again puts them at risk, which is why we remain overarchingly concerned with just the health and speed at which the economy can really recover, which is not something that's just in the U.S., as now in the next segment, we pivot into Europe and what is happening in Europe and what does it mean kind of going forward as we look into the new year.